Hi, welcome to the Community Table, a new podcast hosted by me, Heather Elder of Heather Elder Represents,
and me, Kelly Montez of Apostrophe.
If you've been in the industry for a while, you might remember the original Community Table series I co-hosted with Kate Chase from 2012 to 2017. It was a space for producers, creatives, and industry leaders to gather and talk openly about the work, the challenges, and the changes we were all navigating at the time.
And in 2025, there's no shortage of things to talk about, from AI and evolving client relationships to the way content is being created.
That's why we decided to bring the Community Table back, but this time as a podcast. Kelly and I will co-host, reflecting on the expanding conversations we're having every day with our artists, producers, and creatives shaping what comes next. Whether you're a seasoned producer, a curious creative, or just someone trying to figure out how to thrive in this changing landscape, there's always room at the table.
My name is Jen Pennington. I'm head of production at Orchard.
I'm another Jen Ruski. You can call me Ruski for the purposes of clarity here. I'm an executive producer at Orchard.
Hi, I'm Julie Jean-Baptiste, and I'm a senior producer at Orchard.
And I'm Lourdes Vasquez, a senior producer at Orchard.
And we are now.
Thanks, guys, for being here today. We're so excited to dive into this conversation. I think to kick it off, and I'm going to pass it right back to Lourdes. What is one word you would use to describe the industry today?
The one word I would use is constant. Constantly moving. It's always changing. There's always something new to learn. There's always the next big thing. There's ways that we need to be greener. There's ways that we need to interact with our directors. There's different ways we need to interact with our clients. And I just feel like in order to stay on the ball, you just need to keep flowing with the river of the industry.
It's a great word. What about you, Julie?
I was thinking something similar to what Lourdes was saying, but I was thinking complex. There's always something different that you have to learn that is different from 10 years ago. The way that we cast, you have to be very, very cognizant of how you cast someone, the way that you even scout, a location or choose a director. There are just so many different complexities that go into it nowadays than from 10 years ago. So that's just how I think about it.
That's a great answer. What about you, Ruski?
I think curious. You constantly have to be curious. You have to be curious about the new up and coming directors. You have to be curious about what's on your clients' minds and what are their business objectives. You have to be curious about your creatives and what's important to them and where they're flexible and where, you kind of have to draw the line and protect the creative. Curious about casting, about who the best partners are for, music and post. You can be an expert on lenses and focus and equipment, or, there's just so many layers to be curious and keep learning from your partners and from your team to all, make it the best campaign and work experience possible.
I feel like that was such a wise answer. I'm going to carry that with me for the rest of the day. Jen, you get to follow that.
I agree with all those answers. And I think, I'll build on that by just saying collaboration. I think, we at Orchard, and especially the production department, push so hard on collaboration, not only internally, but with the partners that we bring on board, pushing them to ask the questions, pushing them to be evolving and moving out of their comfort zones, pushing them to push us out of our comfort zones. And I think, in a world where things are changing quickly and constantly shifting and new tools are becoming available, we have to have that open collaboration and that ability to bring yourself to the table, but also hear everyone else that's at the table in order to move quickly and get to the best creative result.
I love how positive all those words were. We've asked that question before, and not that the others were negative, but there was definitely a bit of fear there.
I think you just have to like bend with the wind when it comes to advertising, because one set of creatives or one director or one, I don't know, line producer you're working with is not going to be the same as the next person.
Now, starting with you, Julie, can you speak to your agency's creative ethos? What are the core values or the philosophy that defines the creative?
I think it's a very creative and strategic led agency, because something I've been with Orchard for almost October, this coming October will be 3 years. And something that's different from the agency that I worked for previously is that we're brought in very early on in the process with creative and with strategy, so that we can understand whatever project it is that we're working on at the time, where it's going. And they ask us for our input, and they want to know, like, hey, can we make this happen? Yes, we can, but for for this amount of money, and for like, this is how long the project is going to take. And Orchard is really good at making it more collaborative than combative.
Jen Pennington, I on that note, what do you feel like has been some of the biggest shifts in your role or in just creative development in general over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think, being at a strat-led agency and being brought in so early on projects kind of shapes the whole project differently for me. When everyone on the team is headed to the same goal and understands the goal and why we're headed there, we're able as producers to bring in our partners and explain that as well. What that does, it fosters that collaboration. It really fuels that collaboration. So we don't have to fall into the trap of agency version, director version. To me, that's very different than how I worked in the past, very different than how I came up. And we're really trying to build that with our department.
And has that approach changed any of your clients' expectations, maybe around speed or scope?
The expectations are always there, but I think what it brings is understanding to the clients. I mean, all of our producers are client facing, of course. And so we're able to explain to them the what's and the whys and the how we get to where they want to be. And the more, you're hand in hand with them on the journey, the better they can understand why we can or can't do something, or how, we're going to get the best result. And I think maybe that's a bit different now. And that seems to be progressing for us very positively.
And what about in terms of speed? Are clients expecting things to get done quicker?
Yes, and I think social media, over the past like 5 or 10 years has quickened that pace up as we've moved from like it's always broadcast to, social media. There's a quicker turnover. But I think some things you can move very quickly and some things take more time. And if you if you explain the what's and the whys and the wheres and the levers that you can pull and the options that they have, it becomes a dialogue and it becomes a relationship, right? Because you're in this long-term relationship with your clients and it wants to be a healthy one. You're not making all of the choices and saying, oh, you can only have A, B, or C. You go on the journey with them and you make the right decision together. And maybe it's like, well, we can get here faster, but this is like how we're going to have to bake the cake together.
Yeah. I think they appreciate being pulled into the kitchen, right? Like,
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that just allows them to feel more part of the process of making the thing that they're very excited to make as well. So,
And I think like also a good thing about Orchard specifically from past places I worked at is by allowing us to be more client facing and being beginning of those processes, the trust is there for when you are bringing them into the kitchen. Because I think that's the speed is things are getting faster and faster.
Yeah.
Things are getting faster and faster. And it feels like I'm noticing the clients maybe a bit more understanding. Like even I think it's because there's this transparency of what you have to do to get there. And we're all just trying to make the work the best that we can, on the timelines that we're given. It's the trust that gets you to the end of the rainbow. And it all leads to the same place of like us just trying to make the best work, trying to hit these deadlines, trying to hold hands and just, do the best that we can.
Do you have direct access to your clients, or do you have to go through account people to have these conversations?
We have direct access to our clients. We obviously respect the roles of folks at our agency, but absolutely, we are oftentimes brought in to speak to them directly and help to understand things that might be a bit complicated.
All of this makes me wonder, and I'll pass it to you, Generous Kate. How does that play a role in the vendors that you choose for production? Is there any specific quality in the beginning conversations that makes you feel more positive about moving forward with someone?
For the director or the photographer, right, there's their body of work, but there's also their personality and their reputation, right? If I have a client that's very hands-on, I'm not going to look for a director or photographer that is not known to be very collaborative or flexible. And it's kind of like putting a football team together, or any team, and then who are your post partners? I like to go with the director or photographer's preferred post partners. If I'm all in on a creative partner, my director photographer, I want their key look and feel. Like, I want their all stars as long as they're good partners. There may be a case where, CGI is so important, and I've had a great relationship with this past CGI partner that I would, there are reasons why you would want to pull key post partners in, or music has been so touchy in the past that this partner's always come through for me for whatever reasons. It could be budget, timeline, complexity, challenges that you have your own rock stars, your tried and true. Because I think we've all had times where we have worked with non-rock stars and it got a little crumbly. I think you just want to try to set yourself up for success out of the gate.
Where does the search for vendors begin with you?
I think it depends on the project. Oftentimes we're casting a project, just sort of build on what you were saying. We're casting a project based on what we're looking for. If we are looking at a new hot director, we may want to make sure that we're speaking with their production company, really digging in. Who's the DP that's going to surround them? Who's our line producer? Who's our day-to-day contact going to be? And we may go with their preferred post house, but we may be like, okay, we're taking a chance on a new director, so we're going with a tried and true post house that we feel confident with, that we know the speed of, that we know how they work. So it's all kind of project dependent on how we cast all of the characters to bring that to life.
And at what point is the client brought in?
That also is project dependent. We've had projects where we've brought in and bid directors prior to creating animatics to sell in a project, or to choose a project. It all depends. Sometimes they're brought in on the short list to weigh in just based off of reels. Sometimes we bring just the select to them. So it depends on the personality of the clients as well.
I'm going to add to that. It depends on the personality of the clients and the complexity of the project.
Yeah.
Because if there's a project that, let's just say, if I know that I'm working with new clients that they're not as well versed in CGI, for instance, like maybe when it comes down to my pre-bid, maybe I'm doing a little bit extra information session, learning, like showing them the type of players that are out there. So that way their brains are already understanding this sort of platter I'm going to be bringing to them in a couple of weeks.
Lourdes, I'm curious, how does a creator, a creative person, a photographer, a director, how do they get on your radar?
I like to sign up for newsletters from my reps. I also look at people's Instagrams, like especially when the job is just in like the search mode time. That's like one of my most favorite parts, because you can actually take the moment as a producer to lean into your creative mind and see what is getting you excited. I think that's a cool thing that we get to do. What gets us excited for us to bring to the creative people, the creative teams, to see what gets their juices flowing. But essentially, that's it. I'm just constantly scouring between newsletters, between Instagram, between TikTok, and just like word of mouth. But that's how I get it.
I love that. Julie, what about you?
Word of mouth is really big. Even if you do have, your list of like directors that you like going to, or, your post houses or whatever, there can be a moment where Rusky will just randomly G-chat and say, hey, I just saw this director's reel, check it out. And I'm like, oh, they may be good for, this client. Even recently on a project that I was working on, one of my creatives said, hey, this director might be good for this project that we're working on. And we ended up working with that director.
Word of mouth can absolutely go in the other direction. Your reputation can precede you, good or bad. So I'm curious, what are the missteps you've seen from artists or vendors, and how can those be avoided?
Just because you've been recommended, you still have to come correct with your treatment. You still have to show up on set and show that you want to do good work. I don't appreciate when there's kind of like a complacency. Like if you're like complacent and you're like, oh, well, I got it because, so-and-so recommended me, it kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But then again, on the flip side, so-and-so recommended me, so I really have to step up my game and show that I'm going to do a really good job, so it can go either way.
I think something to be mindful of is coming across as problem solving, I think is important. Like even if you have a really strong creative point of view, that's fine. That's why we hired you. I think it's important to always come across as somebody that wants to be collaborative and wants to figure out how do we get this done at the end of the day, versus battling when there's a problem that we all have, that we have to figure this out. We're not bringing this to you to be difficult producers. It's because we're hearing it from top up, and we want to continue making the best work with you. So please help us figure this out at the end of the day. I think that's a huge piece of advice I think I would pass along to folks.
I'll pass it to Jen Pennington. We've talked a lot about the creative process. I'm curious how AI has played a role in the creative process, or just with research.
There's a lot of fear and uncertainty around it. There's also a lot of excitement around AI. And I think, my perspective is it's a tool, right? And you can utilize that tool however you see fit. You can take it too far, or you can actually utilize it to make your work better. And so thinking about it the way you think about Photoshop, the way you think about Google search, the way, it's kind of just like a bigger, better version in my mind of that. I don't see it replacing human creativity. It certainly doesn't replace collaboration and conversation, which to me are the best fuel for creativity. So I think, understand it, have a look at it, utilize it, but know that, in the end, it's your drive, your creativity that's going to move projects forward to bring a really great end product, not just solving everything with Midjourney.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Like sometimes I get an email and I'm like, you didn't write this.
Yeah.
So Jen, let's start with you. Can you explain the creative brief process at your agency? Who's involved from your team, and what does the brief look like?
So at Orchard, we're strategy led. Generally what happens is the client will meet with strategy to develop the actual creative brief. They'll come across that, they'll agree to it. Then a senior strategist and a CD will be assigned to those jobs, and they're the ones that are developing what we're going to ideate on. We then have full team briefings, and that's when production is brought in as well. And like I said, that's kind of when we all find our North Star, what the objective of that project is. The client is obviously there from the jump, but then is along for the journey through the development.
And what about when a vendor is brought in later in the process? How does that affect things?
a lot of times, to sort of touch on what Lourdes was saying earlier about being able to collaborate or, bend, as Julie was saying, that we, of course, want your creative perspective. And that is why we came to you. But this has been in development for typically months before we come and bring you on board as our creative partners. So there's a lot of learning and understanding that has happened on that journey before this was brought to you to help bring to life. So if we are asking for you to augment something or change something or, how we might do something better that you had in there, it's typically not to be combative, and it's not, it can sometimes be seen as like cowering to a client request, but it's typically like, oh, we seem to have gone off strategy. We're not headed towards that North Star anymore. How can we bring that back?
I'll pass this to you, Jen Reski. The moving images have really been rewarded through social media algorithms. And Heather and I started in the stills world, and I'm curious what you would say the role of stills photography has in advertising today, what that conversation looks like. Do you feel like it's more broadcast led, or are there opportunities for those stills only campaigns?
I mean, I started in print too. And like the winds of change, I am now doing a lot of motion. We are all probably not financially independent. I think there's the way the industry has shifted for different reasons, right? For different media platforms, X, Y, and Z. And I think I've certainly seen the print diminish a little bit, but I don't think photography will ever go away because it is so impactful.
Do you find that most productions are led by what's happening with motion and then a stills component added on these days?
I'm going to give you a broad answer. I'm finding these days more is more. And that could be, it doesn't necessarily need to be one shooter that's a photographer, director hybrid. Sometimes it's a lot of like getting a second shooter in to get a lot of social media assets. So I think more is more, meaning the more assets you can deliver that are meaningful to what the client wants, like in a 360 way, is what we're seeing and what we're being asked for.
I also started in print, and I do see that there was a moment in time of like within the last 10 years before I really got into motion, where it was just motion. We don't really need print. But over the last, I want to say maybe several years, there's been an ask for having a stills photographer on set. I was recently producing a spot that asked for a stills photographer on set because they wanted to have some out-of-home assets. So I still believe there's a world for photography and for stills.
Lourdes, for the photographers that want to become directors, beyond a treatment, what can they do to gain your trust and awarding that project to them?
That's a tough one.
That's a tough one because I would rely on a treatment, and I would rely on how they would speak through the narrative, how they would bring that from still to motion.
That's a great answer. That's great to know.
Like I'm just thinking about, I have a few friends of mine, and I just took a beat and thought about them, and they're all photographers that turned DPs over the last few years. And one friend of mine, it's like when we talk, he's always discussing the narrative, that he's trying to find that key line of his talent and how he can tell it through motion while still keeping his style. And I mean, even as I'm talking through this, I felt very moved. Even in just a friendship conversation, be like, oh, how do I get you to work? But I think that's the best thing I could say in regards to that question.
I also think leaning on their production team, right? Like if I have a relationship with a production company that I trust the EPs there. I trust the work that we've created with them. And I know the production quality that's coming out of that. I'm going to be more likely to take a chance on someone that is trying to make that leap, because I know they're going to be supported by a top-notch production company. So I think a little bit leaning on where you're coming from to help back you up is probably a good shout.
No, real quick, 100% on that, John. Because look, there are some great established directors, photographers, but like I think our job is also to find the newbies, the up and comers. Like just because you don't have all this experience, but whoa, we're super creative and interesting and fun and collaborative. Like you're saying, if they're coming from a production company that we work with you for, we know that they can handle large volume, whatever it is, that's going to help us get over the line with taking chances with new people.
We always love to ask this question, and I'll throw it out to anyone because I think it's an interesting one. What's the craziest thing you've had to produce?
I don't know why this just came to my head, but I once got a project I was working on and once got a text from a line producer that said, the monkey has the typewriter, he's practicing. And I just thought that was like the best. That might be the best stuff I ever got.
I think it's the ones I didn't get. Like there's one, they were trying to do new home delivery food, and one was like a hot air balloon delivering to your backyard. And I think the tell of a pretty, like my tell is like when I don't know how to do that, I'm like, that is really exciting. Let me get back to you on that. And I'm like, how are the hacker like permits? Like how logistically are we going to do that? But I haven't worked on anything crazy that did come to life.
Out about this counts as crazy, but it was very, very random. This is many years ago. A client wanted they had characters for their brand and they wanted mascots, like actual like mascot costumes. So I had to go on the Google and find someone that would produce a mascot. And I found someone in, I don't know, Minnesota or something like that. And it was like a 9-foot wide mascot that we had to like have someone wear and ship to different college campuses and whatnot. So that was pretty random.
I did a job where it was so massive that there was, including me, there was a total of 4 producers on it. And there was 8 celebrity talent. And we were trying to shoot the most for our clients. So that way they had like Q2, Q3, Q4 content. And we shot all of it in a total of 5 days.
Man,
That was probably the craziest job just because you feel like you're on a feature at that point, you know?
yes.
And get out extras and just the vibes on the set. And you're just like trying to hold on as hard as you can. But these are all the stories that like we're saying, every job brings a new challenge and a new, let me get back to you. And I think that's also one of the things that we love about it.
On every job, something's crazy.
Yeah.
Before we end, to kind of bring it back to the idea of the community table, if you could sit down with any one person, who would it be?
I would have Beyonce, Derek Jeter, Barack Obama, and my mother.
I'm going to bring Madonna to that dinner with
That's
you.
a good one. That's a good one.
I would bring Tina Fey.
Oh,
yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, I really respect her fully as a person and just everything that she works on. Kim Gordon, I think she'd be really interesting.
I'll go Terry Gross because she's probably talked to half of them. And Sean Baker. He can make a beautiful movie with not a lot of money.
Well, this was amazing, so insightful, and we're really appreciative of all your time. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us. We're excited to have your podcast back.
Thanks for joining us at the community table. Bringing this conversation to life with Kelly has been such a rewarding way to build on the original series. The more the industry evolves, the more we believe in the power of open, honest dialogue to help us all navigate what's next. We hope today's discussion left you with fresh ideas, new perspectives, or simply a sense that you're part of a larger creative community that's figuring it out together. Be sure to subscribe, share the episode, and pull up a chair next time. There's always a seat waiting for you at the table.